Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Playbook. This week's guest is Arlena. Arlena, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Excellent. I'm doing great. So glad you can make it down today. How you doing? How's business been?
It's been great. This year started off, for me, a little bit slow, but it's definitely picked up now. Even with these rates being as high as they are, people are still buying homes.
Yeah.
That hasn't stopped.
Yeah, it seems like the activity, I've heard from other guests, we kind of hit that lull September of October of last year, but it seems like, activity has definitely picked up. We're running back into inventory problems to be kind of the most problematic thing it seems like agents are running into now.
Yeah, definitely. With everyone that got the rate down in the 2s and the 3s, they're not willing to sell their house now to go buy something higher. So the lack of inventory has been huge right now.
Yeah, they're not budging. So why don't we kind of take a trip down memory lane? So let's kind of go back into, prior to getting into real estate. So kind of why don't you take us through the process of, what kind of got the spark interest in real estate, got the wheels in motions, and, what got you kind of thinking about real estate, and then obviously going ahead and progress into kind of getting licensed and having a career path in real estate?
So I used to bake cupcakes, and I also was in retail work for a long time. So working with the general public, I've done just about my entire career life. And my biggest thing is seeing people happy. When I bring a cake or custom cupcakes to someone and they're smiling and they love it so much, it just makes my entire day. So, selling jewelry, actually, before I did that too in retail, it was great. It's just I didn't want to be tied down. I would work from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. or I'd be closing till 11 o'clock at night, and I've got kids, and I just didn't want to do that anymore.
So it sounds like, prior to getting in real estate, the things that kind of got you interested was you're tied down I don't want to say an office or desk job, because selling jewelry or something, I'm assuming behind a counter type thing, working retail space, but kind of just having that mandated time that you were working, in addition to that, not having the flexibility that you need to kind of be the homemaker and maintain the family, is something that kind of sparked the interest in getting into real estate. But a couple things that I go to when I'm hearing what you're saying is a couple skills that I think you possibly developed prior to getting into real estate that help you with the transition and get into real estate, at a quicker pace and incurring more success, would be the customer service aspect. Did you kind of, work in the retail, not only from the jewelry, but also, the cupcakes and the bakery and kind of baking for your clientele? Did that kind of help with your skill set and the communication skills with the people?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was younger, I used to be very shy. I wouldn't talk to anybody. And as I got older and I had to start working, my first job was actually at Bath and Body Works. And I was forced to talk to people, and I was forced to talk really well and communicate and, mirror the way that they move and talk. And it developed a lot of skills, and especially because I wanted a paycheck. So I had to sell something and move that piece of jewelry at the end of the day. But it definitely taught me a lot of how to deal with the public.
Absolutely. And probably different personalities and how to interact with everybody and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously in real estate, the one good thing, that I like is never is going to be, the same day is going to be the exact as another one. Every day is different. You're kind of coming through different challenges, different problems you got to solve, and kind of just working and maneuvering through that. And, kind of, not to say that wasn't the way in your past experiences, but it probably shed a new light on what you were looking for, and kind of having that flexibility with your schedule, but also not having that mundane routine where every day was kind of going to be different. Yeah. So talk about, now one thing you brought up too is the bakery. So obviously the cupcakes and cakes, and, what I like to do is kind of find out, how a different skill set people are utilizing in their real estate business today, or something that they develop the skill and then kind of transition into the workplace. The unique thing about you is, with the baking and the cupcakes and the cakes and doing these gifts and kind of having that side business as you did in the past, you've kind of incorporated that into your practice today. In fact, you brand yourself as the Cupcake Realtor. Mm-hmm. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, what that is, how you incorporated that, and then what you do kind of for your clientele now to separate yourself out from the competition?
Well, being the Cupcake Realtor, it makes me different. When you see my for sale sign and it's a pink sign with a cupcake on it, it makes you look twice at it. You know, there's probably 5,000 real estate agents in a mile radius in Land O'Lakes. So having that aspect's a little different. I like to bring cupcakes to closings. Actually, my open houses, I'll do a really cool display. If it's St. Patrick's Day, we'll do green cupcakes or whatnot. I've actually started making cake pops where I've hole punched my business card to the cake pops. I've been bringing those to businesses. So it just makes me a little different. And if someone remembers me from really good cupcakes and then all of a sudden maybe they have to sell their house, I'm hoping they remember me also from that aspect too. But also being in that retail and then baking, I'm very good at my husband calls them audibles. Where something goes wrong or I don't have something and I have to make something else with it, I can do just about anything. So if I'm missing something, eggs, I've got something else I can replace it with. So it's really helped me with real estate. When we've got things that go sideways or wrong, I always have a solution or usually a way that we can figure that out before it gets really bad.
And I never thought about that. So what I'm hearing is like, you know, thinking of the baking and what I notice, I don't do too much baking, but, you know, ingredients, you're using different ingredients. And in real estate, you know, we have a set of ingredients. You know, you have your vehicle you're showing houses with, your cell phone that you're communicating with, you have a CRM, whatever it might be. But let's say something went south and you're missing something because of your experience in that, where you can kind of substitute something and kind of keep progressing. You kind of correlated that into real estate where it helps you almost mitigate stress. Like if something goes sideways, you're able to kind of quick, you know, find a solution and move on rather than trying to be like, hey, I need this ingredient type of thing.
Yeah, it's been a big thing. I'm really good at that.
Awesome. Well, that's great. So, you know, one thing is, especially here at our brokerage, I notice is like agents who brand themselves and step out. You know, it's one thing where, you know, agents, I don't want to say mimic or will copy somebody else's branding, but it's real easy with so many realtors or mortgage lenders or, you know, when you have a space, whether it be insurance, to kind of get another crowd out there and, you know, another face in the crowd type thing. It's hard to differentiate yourself. With your branding, one thing that I really want to harp on in this episode, I feel personally that you've been able to differentiate yourself from the crowd. Like I know, like with the brokerage, your branding, who you are, your marketing definitely sticks out where it kind of doesn't get lost in the minutia of like everything else coming in the mail. Why don't you talk about the effects of that you've had? Have you noticed that, you know, whether it's clientele or people, are they noticing your branding? Do they mention stuff? Whether they're using it or not, are you seeing that it's working?
Yeah, so I had this gentleman that would follow me to 2 different open houses because of my cupcakes. So he asked me where the next open house was, actually showed up again for a cupcake. I went shopping at the outlet mall, and actually one person that I get dress shoes from, the guy goes, you're the Cupcake Realtor. Or I've had other people say, you're the cupcake lady. And actually on my business card, it says, making real estate a piece of cake. And everyone loves that. I've actually put that on the back of T-shirts. So when I'm in line in Publix, they'll see it and they'll ask me about it. So it's definitely a different way of just doing things. And I've tried to help, you know, other agents here too. Like, let's set up a brand, something that makes you a little different to stand out from the rest.
So talk about that. Let's do a deeper dive on that. When you were kind of creating the brand, I think a lot of times agents, how can I say, just want to go status quo, right? I think you got to differentiate yourself, and sometimes you're taking a risk. You're putting yourself out there, you're out on the ledge. A lot of agents are apprehensive. They're like, I want to do this, but I don't know how that's going to act in the marketplace. Let me just kind of go with what I see working and just kind of be, like I said, another face in the crowd or do something more vanilla. Mm-hmm. Were you apprehensive? Like when you were like all in, like I'm going to be the Cupcake Realtor, this is what I'm branding on. Mm-hmm. In your mind, were you kind of apprehensive about it? Were you nervous? You're like, how's this going to trigger the marketplace? Or were you like, I'm going to do this, I'm all in?
Yeah, I was a little nervous at first because I did send my card out one time and the guy asked me if it was a birthday card because it was very colorful. Mm-hmm. So I was a little nervous at first, but then again, I thought, what's the worst this could do? Absolutely. I mean, other than somebody saying they don't like my card. I mean, that's the worst of it. So I feel that you've got to go branch out and do something that makes you unique compared to just sticking, you know, a clip art house logo on your business card and calling that your brand. You've got to think about what makes you you and how you can show that to other people so that they remember you.
100%. I completely agree. And then, you know, kind of When let's take you back to that headspace. You're thinking about getting real estate. You're working at the jewelry store. You're working those long hours, those 12-hour shifts. You're behind a counter. You're trying to have some more flexibility, be there for your kids, be there for your family. Almost you're willing to work, but you kind of want to be in control of your own schedule. And if you need to pick up, drop off kids at school, you're able to do those type of things. When you get into real estate, obviously most agents will see all the positives from that, right? Like, hey, real estate can create this, this, and this. I can create the flexibility in the schedule. I can be in control of my own destiny type thing, X, Y, and Z. I always like to ask, what's the one thing you didn't expect? Like a lot of times agents are, watching all these shows, right? And you see all these glamorous shows and all these luxury shows, and you go in and most of the time you're showing one house and you're getting this massive paycheck. But obviously, as you know, it's not always made out to be that way. Mm-hmm. What's the one thing that you can kind of share with the audience that you did not expect when getting into real estate?
Just the bad news you have to break. Like when a short appraisal comes in or, there's something really wrong in the inspection, I didn't realize how much I would stress myself out before I even talked to the client, which may not have been a big deal, but I didn't expect how much bad news I was going to give. And I absolutely hate that. Nobody wants bad news. And when I was delivering cakes and cupcakes, no one was upset when I was showing up with cupcakes. Right? Yeah. So that was totally different. That and then all the driving. Definitely. I didn't realize I drive about 2,500 miles a month, at least, on my car, depending. And that was when I first started, I didn't set my boundaries. And I would drive all the way down to Riverview and all the way down to Palmetto, and I live all the way north of Tampa. So years in, I realized setting these boundaries will save your sanity and save your miles on your car. I mean, you're still going to drive some, definitely, but yeah, that was something I didn't expect. You don't think about that until you're actually in it.
No, not at all. And then one thing I want to kind of talk about too, because you kind of touched on a good point. The delivering of the bad news. A lot of agents, like I said, if you're watching these shows, they never focus on that. They never, it's always like, look at this beautiful home. Everything looks great. The closing's going on. They're going to happy hours and lunch and everything's going great through the transaction. They show up and get this great check. Mm-hmm. But obviously, that's not the case and far from it. When delivering the bad news, let's get in your headspace a little bit. So let's say something's going south and a buyer wants to back out, or an appraisal came in short and you got to deliver the news to the buyer. What's your process? Are you quick to deliver the news? Do you sit and process the information and wait to deliver it? Or do you kind of let it I don't want to say linger on a bit, but are you more patient in delivering that information?
I used to wait an entire day, because I didn't want to deal with it right there and then, and that's bad. You don't do that.
Agreed.
However, I wait a good 30 minutes to let the emotions go out because you're really upset and all of that. So I let the emotions go. After 30 minutes, I'll actually call the client. I give the bad news, but then right after the bad news, I say, okay, well, good news is, and you pull out some positive part of it. And I feel like that totally helps because you're ending that sentence or that on a good note rather than here's bad news, sorry about your day.
So kind of what I'm hearing is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I call it you're becoming grounded, right? That your emotions, they're going to bring you to extreme highs, extreme lows. You're becoming grounded. You're processing the information, kind of coming from a logical aspect rather than emotionally driven and reacting. And then once you process that information, you kind of have a technique, which I call, that I've used, is called sandwiching. It's like good, bad, good. You have two pieces of bread. That's the good news. The bad news is the meat or whatever you're making in the sandwich, and that's the bad. So an example of that would be like, let's say an appraisal came in short, right? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, hey, I'm calling to let you know, I know you love this house. I'm glad you got this home. Fantastic. Unfortunately, the house came in $5,000 short. Now, the good news is, if we can get through this hurdle, this is the last hurdle, we can kind of move on to closing. However, we need to deal with this now. So it's like good news, hey, boom, I got them. Like here, I know you wanted this house. We have you under contract in a competitive market. The other good news was, once we get through this, we can close. But the bad news is, obviously, we're dealing with this hurdle. Your technique was more something similar to that. How would you approach that? Like, kind of share with the audience, like, let's say something went south and you had to call your client. How do you position that yourself?
Well, Monday, we were supposed to close on my listing on Monday, and the buyer Sunday night at 9:30 said they didn't like the payment and they deciding to back out and they're giving up their escrow. I was really upset, so I left it alone until Monday morning, not acting on emotions. And then actually Monday I called my client and I said, look, Unfortunately, the buyers are backing out. I'm so sorry. They're not happy with their payment. You're getting the escrow. Good news is you're going to get paid $6,000 today from the escrow. And then also, too, title company has all the title work done, survey done, everything done. And I even have the inspection report, appraisal report, 4-point, and wind mitigation. So I ended it with, okay, well, the next person we get under contract, I already have everything 50% of the way done. It's just left up to them to get their financing.
And why don't you share with the audience how because a lot of people, and talking to agents, especially newer agents, are very nervous to deliver that news. And the reason I think most people procrastinate is they get inside their own head and create anxiety for delivering that on, something that I feel is out of the control. It's not in your control that buyer's backing out for whatever reason and not closing. There's nothing you can control. So my thing is, hey, I got to get them this information as soon as possible. However, I got to deliver it in a manner where I'm grounded and I'm not making them mirror my emotions and react in a way that they shouldn't. So when you kind of delivered that news in the way you did, which I think is an awesome way, how did your client react to that? What did they say? And what was their temperament?
So they were better than I thought, actually. So they had already moved on to another house. So they didn't need these funds for closing because they would have been a lot more upset if they needed it for the next house. But, they said, well, that sucks, and kind of groaned about it for about 2 minutes. And then after that, they said, well, no, it's not your fault. So it was nice to hear that because not everything, but people will blame you for a lot. And they said, it's not your fault. We can survive. I'm sorry you didn't get a paycheck. And I said, nope, that's no problem. We're getting them back under contract actually today. So 2 days later.
Awesome.
So,
congratulations.
Yeah, it went better than I thought, but you're going to get the people that are going to yell, scream, and have a temper tantrum. And you just have to let it all out. And you just listen on the phone and just do. I've always said, too, as long as you've done your job to the fullest and there's nothing else you possibly can do, then that's all that you can do.
I agree. And I think, too, to kind of just add on to that is, I look at it as like you're the security blanket. If you think like from Peanuts, if you ever watched that with Charlie Brown, Linus always had the blanket he's kind of carrying around as a security blanket. And you're kind of that crutch. So the way you're handling, I think, is how most agents should. That's why I wanted to do a little deeper dive on that. Because you're providing that kind of rock, that security for them, where you're not emotionally heightened. And if you allow your emotions to kind of come down to a level where you can present the information, and then they know that you're secure in presenting this, and you present it in a way that you do, highlighting the positive, saying, hey, don't worry, we're going to get through this, then they're like, it's not what they want to hear, right? It's not an ideal scenario. However, they're like, okay, they feel comfortable moving with you and moving forward and like, hey, I trust you. Let's go forward because they feel that you got it handled. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And has it always been that way? Or like in the past when you would kind of play into your emotions per se before you kind of, figure that balance and how to deliver the information and not get overwhelmed by the anxiety of the bad news, are you noticing that you're having more positive reactions and better relationships with your clientele?
Yeah, as real estate has gone on, like I think you said, you have very thick skin. And I've remembered that. And as time has gone on, you got to think, again, if you've done your job, these people might be upset, but I used to stress myself out so much. I used to get really upset because I knew I was going to have to deliver bad news and I'm going to get yelled at today. It's going to ruin my day. But it's gotten better as time has gone on. I still do get people that are upset, because it's a big thing, and I get it. But the thing is if you have the next moves planned already to get them where they need to go, you can make them feel better, reassure them that we're going to get there sooner.
Absolutely, and like you said, also too, having the mindset that, hey, I know I'm at peace with myself. I'm putting my best foot forward. I'm doing the best I can. With the information that I have at my disposal, I know that I'm giving the best service I can to my clientele, and you can't control how people are going to react. You could do the best at everything, and you could still have somebody who's a negative person give you a negative reaction, right? So it's just having that mindset to be like, hey, I'm going to do my best regardless of what people think. Sometimes if I have that client who, people have a bad day, and unfortunately, you might be the punching bag that day, and they kind of want to take out their emotions on you or that anger or whatever. But you kind of have the headspace to know, hey, I know this is kind of just dealing with human emotions, and I know I'm going to do the best job, and I'm not going to get worked up or lose any sleep over kind of people accusing me of things that I know aren't true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So then, right now, obviously in the marketplace, I feel last year, beginning first, second quarter, we're kind of a whirlwind, right? Rates were low, inventory was tight, multiple offer situations, marketplace was on fire, and a really appreciating market. Third and fourth quarter started to slow down. Rates started to come down, rates started to go up, I should say. Activity came down, and we were nervous. I haven't seen a transition like that. I don't think since I've been in real estate how it kind of happened so quick overnight from this massive, amount of activity to almost where it became stagnant. I think from what I remember from the brokerage, October and November, now those are pending months, were probably two of the slowest I've seen from a downward transition in the marketplace over such a short period of time. Now I feel like we're back, almost getting back into that first and second quarter. What I see, and obviously you're in the field more than I am, is that you have extreme inventory constraints, meaning buyers are still willing to, if the house comes on the market at the correct price, it's marketed correctly, it doesn't need repairs, they did everything they needed to show the house, new carpet, paint, things like that, it's show ready, that you're going to go ahead and get a lot of activity, multiple offer situations. The only difference I would say is back, a year ago from today, if the house was in poor condition, like everybody was buying and like, hey, no house was a bad buy, that if the house needed work or needed repairs, like you heard people getting like post occupancies, no repairs being done, waiving inspection contingencies, things like that you don't really see in the marketplace right now. Mm-hmm. However, the homes that are priced right, ready to move are very active and are still selling above list price. Mm-hmm. What's kind of your experience? What are you personally seeing?
The number one thing in this market is that these houses need to be priced right. Because when the frenzy was going on, they could be overpriced. It didn't matter. You were still going to get over asking price. But if something is priced too high right now, it's going to sit. But with the lower inventory, if something's priced right, we're running into multiple offer situations again. It's not, we're not giving up every contingency in the world, but we're still getting the listing that I had 6 offers on the second day. Wow. So it's still been happening. I've noticed like the lower price range, the 300 to 500 has been moving quick. And then something a little bit higher than that's taken a little bit longer. But people are still out there buying. We did have the slowdown, but it's definitely picked back up in the last 2 months, I would say. Yeah,
I think we've really seen, I would say March, 2 months, because March we've really got a spike in activity, and it's continuing to get, hotter and hotter, and I'm curious to see what the summer's going to bring. Now, also, too, kind of coming over, you've been, great for our brokerage and referring other agents to us who are successful of yourself. Brooke is one that kind of comes to mind off the top of my head. When you're talking to agents, there's a lot of agents who are kind of tuned into the show, whether they're a brand, newly licensed agent, they've been licensed for some time, but not having the success that they want to have, or maybe they're kind of on the fence now, debating whether they want to get licensed or not, or probably in the process. Like when you're talking to agents, like such as Brooke and kind of coming over, because you've kind of taken that nurture with her, you're an agent advisor here with us at the brokerage, so you're constantly giving advice to different agents. What would be, your one piece of advice you give to a struggling agent or an agent who's newly licensed, looking to have success in real estate?
We were taught before to treat it like a job, to actually every day, you're up by a certain time. My day starts a little late. I'm not a morning person. I'm up late, but 10 o'clock every day, I'm up functioning and I'm on the computer by 11. And that's going through emails, going through my past clients or whatever I need to respond to people. Mm-hmm. And then I take another hour looking through listings, sending those out, and then anything else I have to do for the day. As long as I do that every single day, unless I have to run out to show houses, but the consistency with that will bring you more business. Mm-hmm. Because I used to work a couple days, take 3 days off, work a couple days, 2 days here, and then ever since I've started doing daily consistent tasks, now I have more consistent income, more consistent sales than I did before, definitely.
Yeah, so what it sounds like is just kind of creating that routine, regardless if you're a morning person or an evening person, just setting that routine almost like a boundary, knowing that during this time I'm working, and then having that consistency, right? Like what regardless of what time it is, just making sure that it's not one day in, one day off, because obviously you're never going to get the consistency or the traction you want by, not really being disciplined to a schedule or a calendar. Fair to say?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, awesome. And then, if you are also too kind of, with agents out there struggling and kind of, I don't want to say, they're trying to find their place, they're getting disciplined. They're thinking about the branding aspect. I think one thing too that you can kind of shed, a little light on is the branding. Like if they're struggling with an identity, when you I want to kind of retract back to what you're talking about, the Cupcake Realtor, and bring you back to that headspace of, going on and creating your brand, the color scheme, all that kind of stuff. If I'm an agent, I'm struggling. I'm like, I don't know what I want my identity to be, right? I want to do this brand. I want to stand out. What are some things? Was there any like creative activities you did? Was there any meditation involved? What did you do to kind of come up with this conceptual like intelligence that you now have brought out into the marketplace?
Well, I mean, I thought about hobbies, things you like to do. If you're involved in a nonprofit organization, like if you like animals, ASPCA, I mean, my thing was baking. And so I'm like, how cool would it be to make a cupcake with like a welcome mat on the top or something and bring those to open houses? So when I got thinking about that, I'm like, I had a boring business card, the same business card everybody probably throws in the trash. Yeah. And when I go to show houses, I see everyone's cards lined up on the counters. And as soon as I drop my new card down that's really pretty with a cupcake on it, people look twice at it. Yeah. But I looked at my boring card and I'm like, all right, what can we do? I've got to add this in somehow. And somebody called me the Cupcake Lady because my name's unique and not everyone remembers my name. So she called me the Cupcake Lady. And then I thought about, okay, how are we going to pull this into real estate? My husband actually made up the name, the Cupcake Realtor. And I was like, all right, I was scared at first because I'm like, does it make me sound like a little girl, like a child? But again, I was like, well, what can I lose? And somebody can just say they don't like it, but it's totally different. I know like Amy in the office, she loves flamingos. And I've been pushing her to help her make a card with these cool flamingos on it and then come up with a brand, like, something about a flock and homes. And so, you got to find what you like to do. And we can figure out a way to get it on a card. Yeah,
absolutely. And it sounds like you kind of took your passion or your hobby, right? You're kind of brainstorming, you're kind of going through with your ideas with kind of people in your network, and then obviously your husband being one who kind of brought into the name into fruition. And it was just more of a thought process. So it's kind of like, hey, I want to differentiate myself. I want to have a brand that kind of sticks out, is what I hear. And how can I do that? And I think what I'm hearing, and I think makes most sense too, is do something you're passionate about, right? Like you like the baking, you have that in your background. You thoroughly, even though you make money from it still and made money in the past from it, you enjoy doing it. So it's something you're passionate about, something that you're proud of, you want to be known for. And it's like, hey, if I'm an agent and I'm hearing this, it's, I'm trying to find what am I passionate about? What do I want to be known for? And how can I incorporate that into a brand that's going to stick out from the competition?
But, and even with that too, so you might run in, if you have a dog on your card or flamingos or something, you might run into somebody else that also loves that too. And so there could be a connection there. And then also it gives, I feel like it gives the outside a glimpse into your life that you're not just a real estate agent. You do have a life outside of that, and you might like other things and do other things. So I feel like having that too gives people a little like, oh, it's not just a Coldwell Banker card. Here's flamingos on it and hearts and a cute saying on it for Amy or something. So I feel like it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, and what I call that is you're humanizing the experience. You're not just like another realtor, another face in the crowd. You're almost like showing that human component, being a little vulnerable, and you're going to build that connection with your clientele. So that's awesome. So Arlena, we appreciate your time. Thank you for coming down to be a guest on this week's podcast. For any buyer or seller out there in the Tampa Bay marketplace, if they're looking to buy, if they're looking to sell, and maybe they're not even looking for real estate. Maybe they're looking for a cake to be baked or cupcakes, whatever it might be. Why don't you go ahead? We're going to share this on our social media as well. Why don't you go ahead and share the best way to get a hold of you? Why don't you give us the best number to reach you on, whether it's call or text, and also the best email address?
Okay. Well, my cell phone number, it's a 315 area code. It's 315-416-4364. And then my email is my first name. It's Arlena, ARLENA, @54realty.com.
Well, awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate that. We'll make sure to get that posted. We thank you so much for coming down to be a guest on this week's show. And once again, we appreciate all of you for tuning in to another weekly episode of the Real Estate Playbook.